the stars of Ash Lake. I've always been a completionist and achievement hunter. I love exploring all the hard-to-reach locations in my favorite games, looking for hidden walls and unexplored pathways hidden in the scenery. Dark Souls was a game notorious for doing this, hiding the best loot in plain sight but far away from the ordinary path. I spent countless hours exploring all of Lordran, scouring the internet to find anything I might have missed along the way. On my fourth playthrough of Dark Souls, something was off. It wasn't anything obvious at first. The bonfire at Firelink burned lower than usual, its light flickering weakly against the ancient stones. The air felt heavier, and when I looked up I noticed something strange. The sky was different. Gone was the hazy, clouded gloom I'd grown accustomed to. Instead, the sky was clear, impossibly deep, filled with stars that shimmered far brighter than they should. They weren't scattered randomly. They felt deliberate, forming intricate patterns across the heavens. It reminded me of something, though I couldn't place it. The stars followed me. By the time I reached the undead parish, they had shifted, their positions forming a faint path that pointed toward the Bell of Awakening. I rang the bell, and as its sound faded, the stars above pulsed faintly, as if in response. Laurentius noticed it too. "You've seen them, haven't you?" he said when I returned to Firelink. His voice was quieter than usual, as though afraid of being overheard. The stars, they weren't here before. I don't like how they move. It's like they're looking for something, or someone. When I tried to ask him more, he shook his head. "Don't follow them. Whatever they're pointing to, it's not for us." In Aner Londo, the stars were impossible to ignore. The city's usual golden glow was gone, replaced by a twilight that bled into the horizon. The stars above dominated the sky, arranged in strange, spiraling constellations that engulfed the entire skybox. When I entered Guinevere's chamber, I found Gwendolyn waiting in her place. He didn't attack me. Instead, he stood in silence, his masked face turned upward. "They don't belong here," he said at last, his voice trembling. "You see it too, don't you? This sky, it is not ours." I stepped closer, but Gwendolyn recoiled, fading into the shadows. His voice echoed faintly as he disappeared. "They do not lead you to salvation." Those words sent a chill down my body. Coupled with the growing unease I was feeling in the game, the dialogue pushed my mental fortitude into overdrive. I was absolutely confused by the things I was seeing. Maybe it was a mod or something I had installed and forgotten about. I tried desperately to rationalize with myself as I descended into the catacombs. The stars were everywhere now, their lights spilling into the darkest corners of Lordran. They seemed to direct me, aligning with hidden paths and forgotten doorways. Even enemies seemed drawn to their pull, their movements erratic and frantic. In the catacombs, Patches greeted me with his usual sly grin, but there was an edge to his voice this time. "Ah, it's you," he said, his eyes flicking toward the stars. "You're following them, aren't you? I can see it in your face. You think they're leading you somewhere grand." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Let me give you a bit of advice," he continued, leaning closer. "When you get there, don't look her in the eye. That's where it begins." The stars guided me deeper than I'd ever gone before. Their faint light illuminated the way through the great hollow. The interior was lined with many different glowing runes that pulsated faintly on my descent. Strangely, the area seemed to be missing all the enemies entirely. There were no chimeras or mushroom people lining the treacherous paths leading me to Ash Lake. When I exited the tree, the landscape was almost unfamiliar. The sky above Ash Lake was unlike anything I'd seen in Dark Souls. It wasn't the dark void of this world, but an endless sky with thousands of twinkling stars. They glided slowly around the horizon in grand constellations, and swirling nebulae, the deep, haunting glow of the stars, reflected from the surface of the onyx lake. I walked along the ash-covered shore, the reflection of the sky rippling faintly in the water. At the far end of the lake, where the everlasting dragon once waited, I found something new, an altar of glistening black stone, surrounded by faint ghostly lights. The stars above began to spiral, their patterns collapsing into a single brilliant constellation. The figure it formed was unmistakable, a slender woman with 4 arms, her shadowy form veiled in cascading stars. Ranni. As I approached the altar, my character knelt without my input. The screen darkened, and her voice echoed, soft and melodic, but filled with an unknowable weight. "You have wandered far," she said. "Too far, perhaps. This sky, it is not your own. And yet you have been chosen to see it." The stars pulsed as her voice grew quieter, almost mournful. "Do you understand? You walk the seam between ages, between worlds. This is not the first. It will not be the last." The camera panned upward, focusing on the endless sky as the stars began to shift again, their light forming a spiral that reached down to the altar. My character was consumed by it, their body dissolving into starlight. The screen faded to black, and a single line of text appeared. The Age of Fire is but one thread in a tapestry of endless nights. When I returned to the main menu, the usual fire was gone. In its place was the starry sky from Ash Lake, swirling faintly. My save file was gone, replaced by one labeled Tarnished. No matter how many times I try to load the save, though, it crashes to my desktop. I even tried to delete it, but it just freezes the game. I looked through my mod list and made sure I didn't have anything installed. I don't have an explanation for this playthrough, and I can load other saves just fine. Has anyone else had something like this happen in a playthrough of Dark Souls? Has anyone else found Ranni in Ash Lake? Please contact me if you have any information on this, or if you know how to load this save file.